crazy, but I didn't know he would.
How did it run after that, Cat?
It helped it. It didn't spin as much coming off the turn.
Welcome to another high-octane episode of Southern Dirt Motorsports.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff Walker, and to my right is Gary Lorance, and to my left is Randall Davis. And in the center here, we have got Miss Gilda Cantrell, and she was the wife of the late Kenneth Cantrell, and he was the owner of the Macmillan Speedway. And we're going to get the pleasure of talking to her this afternoon. And Gary and Randall have got some memorabilia from the racetrack. And Pina and Gilda, they always had a way of making everybody feel welcome at the racetrack, and felt like you were needed at the racetrack. And they've got some memorabilia they want to talk about today.
Gilda, would you describe what this is, what was taking place?
This is a picture of Kenneth Peanut on the flag stand out at the track.
And this was Macmillan's
This was the first Macmillan Speedway
that you and Kenneth
that we built. And I think that it's about 61, probably.
That would
because
be about right.
It's a nighttime shot. I found this picture from, I don't know whether they could see it or not, but I found it in a drawer that I was going through. It happened to be on Kenneth's 5th year. He's been gone 5 years, and it was this February that I found this picture. I had no idea. Don't know where it came from. Don't know anything about it, other than I did recognize it.
Yeah.
That's it.
If you will.
Now that's 308. That's Hullett's car.
Charles Hullett.
Charles, his first car. And I found that. I had no idea it was here.
Yeah. Of course, he ended up driving the old legendary Hudson car.
Yeah, he had the
That was a Hudson, or that was actually the
Was
Hudson
it?
car.
Hudson
and all.
car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when it
That was
started
his
out,
first one.
when it started out, you had to have a motor in the same
And the same
car.
kind of car
okay.
that you were driving.
All right.
If you drove Chevrolet, you had a Chevrolet motor. If you drove Ford, you drove a Ford motor.
Okay.
And
So that was actually Ike's car there,
that
too.
was
Yeah.
that car.
Yeah.
And this are the tickets, and I'd say that's the second year that we were open that Kenneth decided to promote. You bought 10 tickets for $9 in place of $1, and that's what we charged to get in. Kids got in free, and they came in a book, and you got to have those little tickets.
And these are probably the only ones still in existence.
I have no earthly idea.
And one more little
And
item
this
here, if
one-
you will.
Go ahead.
This right here we found it after my dad passed away. It is a free admission to the Macmillan Speedway, and I've never seen it before, but it's got his name on it, got Kenneth's name on it, and if you will, you can tell us what year maybe that was there.
I have no idea because they're not dated. I found one also, and it says, this pass is good for any time. But this one is, and I don't know whether this was a joke. I don't know
Well,
whether.
that's what. See,
I have no idea.
my dad and Kenneth was bad to pull jokes on each
Exactly.
other all the time, and I think there ought to be a story behind this.
There
somewhere
must
or other.
be, but I don't know all of his stories. And if I did, I couldn't tell them. So, But that's just, he gave those out to people that he wanted to get in free. We had one guy, it's like I said, we charged $1. Kids got in free. I had one guy that would come through every Sunday afternoon or Saturday night, whatever it was we were running, that would hand me $100 bill. I don't know whether he did it thinking I couldn't make change or whether he did it trying to show off that he had a $100 bill. But I'd take his $100 bill and give me back 4 20s and a 10, and 5 whatever it was, and 4 ones, because I think he thought I couldn't make change. But Bill Byers' wife, what's her name?
I don't.
I'll think of it here in a minute. But anyway, she helped me down in the ticket booth because she had worked at a bank, and I knew she could do money as fast as I could. So,
Kind of on average,
yeah,
how many people came to the
Oh,
races?
my.
crowd-wise?
I don't know.
That-
I have no idea.
The
The first
The
race,
highway that is now a 4-lane was a 2-lane at the time. And there'd literally be people parked up and down the
Up and
side
down
of the
the
road
highway.
because there wasn't room in that field to park everybody that would come. That was a place to be on Saturday
on
night.
Saturday night.
And the concession stands that they had, the food was
And
good.
we didn't have anything to do with
And
concession.
the food was really good, and
It
you
was.
could smell it from the road too. Now,
The
I don't know who
Griffiths-
operated that
The
either, but
Griffiths, they did that. We didn't have anything to do. He just said, we'll take care of the concession stand. And we didn't have anything to do with it. We didn't take any money from it. That was theirs. And it was good.
it was, and that was the place to be. The food was good, the entertainment was good, because actually that's a business we're in car racing, is entertaining people.
And it
And
did.
if you weren't there, you weren't anywhere on Saturday night.
I'd say that first race, there was probably about 1,200 people, if not more.
I can remember, I remember talking about an average, like, just average 900 to 1,000 people. A lot of
We
Saturday
did,
night.
as long as there wasn't any competition. When we went to nighttime, Winchester was still running on Sunday afternoon. So we could run on Saturday night and have the same cars that they didn't wreck. We'd have the same cars down there on Sunday afternoon. But when Winchester lit their track, the competition for both tracks, and then the Sparta track had one, we had 4 or 5 Saturday night tracks that you can't compete with that many. There's just no way, and that's one reason we had a 5-year lease, and that's one reason we only did the 5 years. We sold the track the 3rd year to a Martin, I think.
Mr. Martin had credit company.
Yeah, I believe it was too. And I think he sold it to someone in Winchester, but we bought it back because there's too much competition, and then we shut it down after 5 years because the lease was up and they would not release for
Well,
us.
we went through a period of time there that there was too many racetracks,
Little tracks.
and they went through a period of time they didn't want to work with each other on who was going to race on Friday night, who was going to
Exactly.
race on Saturday
Same
night.
problem now.
And
Yeah.
a lot of it you would try to run on Sunday evenings, but in the middle of the summer, people can't sit
You
out
can't
in the
do
hot
it.
sun,
and
and the track would get
Oh,
so
my.
dry.
And Winchester, they showed that, if you find those film, it would be so dusty that you couldn't see. And they
It
had
was
the
an
best track.
exercise in good faith.
It was, but they had the best track around. They had the best dirt. They had red clay that would pack. And it had been packed for years because it was a horse race track before it was a car track.
It was an old fairground.
Old fairground, and they raced horses with carts behind them. I forgot what those are called, but anyway, that track was packed
Well,
hard.
Well, the track that you and Peanut built had one unique thing, and Gary probably think of this too. Both ends, both turns, all 4 turns were alike on that track.
Exactly.
It was.
Very few tracks, and Jeff will attest to that to this day. Very few tracks. I don't know of another one that all 4 turns are alike
Same,
on it.
and the
But
same.
that track was. And if you could handle on one end,
You
you could
handle
handle on
the.
the other end. So
Now, go
That
down the
was-
straightaway, you may not, because there was many that was rolled down the middle of that straightaway. I can remember that.
well, there was a few cars, including myself, that for whatever reason there was a rut or something, you would climb the front straightaway banking,
Banking.
and you would flip right under the flagman stand.
That's where I understand Cat Road Circle too.
He did that. Don Hobbs did that.
I don't
did
remember.
That.
I don't remember that wreck. I don't know whether I wasn't there or whether I just blocked it out to see my car
Yeah.
roll. I have no idea.
But you guys made heroes out of a lot of these
Oh
local
my goodness.
short track racers.
Yeah.
You had like Bud Fox versus the World at one time, maybe, and Earl Lorance and
Yeah, Bud Fox out of Nashville. Fred Fox was his daddy, and he was a character. I wish people could have met old Fred Fox. You talking about a hillbilly or a redneck or whatever you want to call him? Fred Fox was one of them, and he was a character.
Well,
I like
I can remember him and the Landers that owned IP2. Now you talking about two? When they got one of them would come in and nothing go stomping the ground.
Oh,
Just looking at him.
There was some a Farrell that used to come.
Buddy Farrell drove.
Bud Farrell.
He drove one for Mr. Fox. He actually drove for Bud did.
Yeah. Fred didn't want Bud to drive. Really, he did not want Bud Fox to drive at all. He'd rather he had Griggs in his car for a while. That was one of them that he drove for, and I don't remember all.
It's always good to have a rivalry. Any kind of racing, like Petty and Pearson.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well,
all these
Earl,
rivalries.
Earl, he had several rivalries.
Yeah.
I mean, people were really he was the one they wanted to beat. Don Hobbs wanted to beat him so bad he couldn't see straight, and I don't think he ever did.
And then BK Luna came.
Oh, my
and all these
gracious.
guys.
That was something else.
Like legendary. Even
Hullet.
today, all these people remember all these stories about it.
Hullet was another one
Yeah.
that Leo kept on his thumb a lot.
They brought
That
that
was-
old car up to the Hall of Fame,
Oh,
where Steve has got the Hall of Fame going again. And C.H. Hullet was inducted this time around, along with Randall. And they brought that car, and I mean, it looked dangerous to ride. I mean, much less win a race, in. And I know they won a bunch of races with that car. It even runs today.
Oh,
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's real close to what it was the last time it was raced.
And it was probably raced at McMill Speedway.
probably.
Yeah.
Well, the 414, when we went up there that day to look at it, where it was sitting in the thicket and I only got cleaned out around it, I walked up there and looked at it, and I drove the car. Remember when I was little? I didn't know it had a one roll bar in it. And I thought, God, this is a dangerous looking thing I've ever looked at.
They were. They were. But the speed wasn't that fast. You all have to remember, these were flathead Fords.
Had about 100 horsepower.
Yeah, and they didn't go that fast, but they were exciting.
But you got to
No.
remember, these people were towing these things with tow bars.
Oh
most
yeah,
of the time,
we didn't
right?
have a trailer.
usually
We
what-
never had a trailer. We pulled.
Yeah.
Hey, we pulled Circle 2 back from Nashville on a log.
On
one
a fence
night.
post,
On a
wasn't it?
fence post. I'm telling you, there was no way. I don't remember whether it was the left or it was
Right
the
front-
rear.
right rear wheel
It was
come
a
off of it.
rear wheel. I know that, and nobody had anything that we could fix it with to bring it back. So they took down the fence post, and we drove that car back.
Yeah.
From Nashville.
And I remember Paul them talking about that they'd stop every few miles and it
Get
would
a
wear
fence
off,
post.
and they'd raise the car up and stick the post down a little bit
You
further.
had to take a fence post down some old man's fence, to get all the way back home. Took all night. I don't know what time we got back home. I have no idea.
Gary's got all kinds of tales about when they would go off different places and try
Oh,
to get
my
home. It was a
yeah.
big chore.
Sometimes you didn't have enough gas to get
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
I walked through the pits many a nights. Hey, guy, you got a gallon of gas or something? We need to have an extra gallon and get home. And I usually could talk them out of a gallon of
Yeah,
gas,
yeah.
Well, the thing that made Gilda and Peanut really good promoters is they were racers. They knew how hard it was,
Yes.
and they knew what it took to get to a track, and that's I guess the key element that made them the promoters they are. And Gilda will remember this. You've always got this guy that says we're not getting the right cut of the gate. They gave you half the gate, and the track kept half the gate. So Gilda or Peanut One came up, they would write the checks down to the cent. It wasn't $10. It was $10.38 or
Exactly.
something like that. So nobody could argue whether they were getting their fair
But
share.
that 38 cents meant a lot. That
It
buy a
was.
loaf of good bread.
But, that took the argument completely away of whether or not.
There was times it was slim's pickings, but like I said, money was hard to come by.
Did y'all guarantee the purse, or was it actually
No,
percentage of the gate?
we guaranteed a percentage of the gate.
Right.
And I don't remember how it was laid out. I just know whenever we got the final amount, we counted the money and we figured it up, got it all set, decided how it was going to go down on your heat races. That's the way it was. Had anybody had anything down there that night, they would have helped us get it together and get home with it. They would
Sure.
have done it. It just, because you did it. It was just different. People were different.
Yeah.
We didn't have to lock our doors then.
It was a simpler time, wasn't it?
It was the best of times.
Yeah. things are kind of, like you say, y'all are all pioneers because you were just getting things started. You were learning, like Randall said. It was all new.
It was new.
You had to make a mistake to know what you needed to fix.
You need to fix.
It wasn't broke, didn't need fixing until you made that mistake or somebody got hurt.
And after we closed that track, he opened up a go-kart track down where Captain D's is in that area. He opened up a go-kart track so kids could have a place to come and play and learn how to drive. Sure enough, that's what it was all for. My boys were the same Jeff's age of my youngest one, and they had to learn to drive somewhere.
And
He
that's
drove.
that's where most drivers come from.
Yeah.
They do start.
I mean,
go-kart
you
racing.
learned to drive right down there, and you—that's where your driving skills
Yeah.
came from. So
Thank goodness, some of us don't ever grow up.
I don't think Kenneth ever grew up. I think that's one reason he
Yeah.
enjoyed doing the things that he did. That it was for kids that we just didn't have anywhere to go.
All these guys like Lee Earl and them, Don Hobbs especially, they just big kids when they
Yeah.
Oh yes, they live that now every day.
Yeah.
And that's what I've liked about that going up there standard, going in the back room where they was working that back there. They would just get louder and louder back there, and they'd run on Saturday night, then rerun on Monday
Running
morning.
on Monday morning.
I tell this story about Julius Todd, a guy.
Yeah.
He actually, when we interviewed him, he told the story about actually having a car that raced out the old McMill Speedway. He just owned it, but he didn't drive it. But I tell a story about Standard Auto Parts, like you said, that's where my dad
Yeah.
worked in the back, building engines and things. And
Oh, that's good.
them guys would meet up after the races, and whoever won the night before had to buy cold drinks. And that's where I made the kind of thing. Julius bought a lot of cold drinks because he won a lot back in that
Julius
time.
was a successful guy
He was.
and a nice guy.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, there were a lot of good guys. Lord have mercy. I had a bunch down here. Leonard Brown. I hope you all get to.
We're going
interview
to try.
him.
The Leonard Brown was a prominent racer at
Wasn't he at
the-
Winchester.
Wasn't he at the first race you had out there?
Oh, I'm sure he was.
I believe he was
He and
there.
Kenneth, we were all good friends. In fact, I sold him one of Kenneth's T models a few years ago. But he can give you a lot of information. He's probably
We're going to try to
Famous
contact Leonard and try to, if he'd like, do one of these podcasts
Yeah,
with
he-
him. But
We done talked to him, and he said he would be glad to do one. And what we're trying to do is wait till the weather gets a little bit better because he
Don't
has got a
wait too
service
long.
station and he is remodeled down there and all.
and put his old cars in.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
But if you could talk to these guys, Bobby Stevens' brother, what's his name?
Oh,
But anyway, he owned a car. And
Bobby drove a
he
car.
was telling me the story about when he raced out there. And he actually let Bud Fox drive the car one night, and they blew the engine up in it. But he told that with such gleam in his eye. Wallace, that's right.
Bobby was a good driver.
Bobby
Bobby
Stevens
became
was a
good
good
at
driver.
setting front ends up running a front end machine.
That's right.
Him and Cat and Don and Hullett and Lorance and Slatton, Billy Joe Slatton. So many of those boys.
but they all learned out there at
Yeah.
y'all's track. I mean, that's where they all began at, and they learned. And after 2 or 3 years there, they got better, and y'all got where you didn't need to house town cars.
No.
You had enough cars right
We had
here.
enough cars after a couple of years. We had enough cars to run on our own, and that's what Winchester did, and we did, and then Sparta did. But you can't draw enough crowd.
Yeah.
And some of the guys got hungry for more money, and if you don't have the crowd, you don't have the money. And a lot of them were driving for the money to make payments of their own, and to live on. I know we did when Kemp first started racing, and we were racing in 57, 58, 59. If he brought home and he won a lot of races in Winchester. And that was our grocery money. That was our rent money. At that time, we rented, and you had to win or you didn't eat.
Well, a lot of
you
times
know-
what you did on Saturday night determine whether you'd be there next Saturday.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Night
If
or
you
not,
couldn't
too.
go to the junkyard and pull out what you need and pay what little bit that they would ask for it, you couldn't run.
But like sponsors, like NASCAR, if they didn't have
We didn't
the
have
sponsorship and the TV sponsorship,
They
but
couldn't
like
do that.
even as great a promoter as Pino was, Gary talking about you had some signs around the racetrack, that people would buy and
Yeah.
stuff. So there's
have
so
that.
many angles, but back then you didn't have all those
that.
angles.
You
You were just
didn't
getting
have any
started,
of
so you
that.
just had
You
to feel
just-
your way around.
That's
It's-
what
Exactly.
came in the gate. That's what you had.
That's
That's
what
right.
you had. That's it. That's what the drivers had is a percentage of the gate.
That back at that time, I remember when we first started. My mother, the day worked started out with us working at the shoe factory, and then
50 cents an hour, something like that.
well, they bring home $28.50 a week.
A
What they
week.
brought home.
And you had to live, and that was a lot. You had to
They had
stop.
a good job.
That was a good job, and that was a lot of money because bread, like I said, 12 cents a thing, hamburger, 25 cents a pound. I mean, you could live on that. And what little they could draw on a race car, that was just excess money. That was good
Well,
money.
that's one thing that made the racetrack the place to be on Saturday night. It was economical enough. A family could come, they could eat at the concession stand, they could buy the tickets to come in and still
Kids
had money
didn't
to
have
live
to
on.
pay, so
Right, they could live on
They
that,
could
that
feed
through
them.
the week. But
Wow.
now, when you think of what it costs a family to go to a cup race, it's like they got to take their vacation and go to one race a
One
year
race a
because
year.
it costs so much. And somewhere along the line, that there something will have to happen where the average guy can go to the races and go to more than one.
It's
So
too expensive now. There's
It
no
is.
way.
the cars are, the races are, and I'd like to see a cheaper form of racing get
It's just-
started.
It won't go back, I don't think. I don't think it'll ever go back.
It
to
won't
what
go
was.
back to what it was and shouldn't, but hopefully somebody can come up with a better mousetrap so that people can do it, can watch it without having
Well,
to sacrifice the
If you
farm.
didn't pay the drivers now don't have anything to do with the car.
Oh.
They're hired to go in
Right.
there. And if they didn't have to pay the drivers the amounts that they pay them and support a car, a car now, I wouldn't even begin to know what would a car cost today.
About $80,000 for a real good dirt car.
I'm not talking about dirt.
A cup car now, I have no idea. I'm talking about something.
Puts me out of the league right
Yeah,
now
yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
not going to pay that kind of
But
money
now you got to have a tractor trailer
to haul.
to haul it with.
Yeah.
And back in we had a tow bar with a 56 Ford tied to it.
Exactly.
A blue one.
And a lot of times, that car that was pulling the car was also in one of the races that was there that night. That might be in the
Right.
figure eight or it might be in the jump, but that was part of it.
You could have Larry DeLong tell you the story about they blew an engine in the race car and they pulled it out of a truck. They had an old antique like truck and they had a souped up engine in it. They pulled that engine out of that
And
truck
put it
that
in
night,
the
put it in the
car.
race car and raced, and then they changed
Yeah, changed it.
and went back.
That was commonplace. That was commonplace. If you couldn't get it out of the junkyard and you couldn't build one like your dad
Yeah.
could, then you were out of the picture unless you could get somebody to do it for you.
Yeah.
And Cuff was lucky enough to have somebody to do it for him.
Well,
a lot
I'll
of
tell you
times.
what, you and Kenneth, we're the lucky ones because you guys, y'all don't realize, I don't think, that what you started, and there's not enough words to say how
Well,
much that everyone appreciates
hope-
everything that you've done.
I hope
And,
we've left a footprint for younger people to see. It was fun at one time, and we were glad to do what we could do. We didn't get to do much, but
You
I
know,
know he was.
Probably without you and Kenneth, this podcast wouldn't
Wouldn't be
exist
going on.
because y'all were responsible for getting the racing started in this area.
Well, I
And then
have to
Sparta
agree
followed
with that.
after that.
that's like
It's
Gary.
part
He
of
always
being
talked
activated.
about what a good childhood he had growing up. And I'm the same way. Growing up around all these
Yeah,
people, it
well,
was a
I drug
huge
this
positive.
I drug this
influence.
into Winchester many times.
Yeah, it was a huge positive influence on everything. All about it was positive and good. It was
I
nothing. I
appreciate
can't think
that.
of anything that was negative.
I appreciate
And
that.
so there's not many things that you can say that about.
I'm sure Cuff
And
knows it.
there's not many promoters that you race for that you still like we do Gilda.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, it was fun doing it at the time, and I know Cuff knows that it's been appreciated. And I appreciate getting to do this with you guys.
Absolutely,
because
we
it's-
appreciate you, and we want
The
to thank
pleasure
you.
is all
No,
ours.
Steve, he does a lot of work and puts this on, and we appreciate everything he does. But if it wasn't for people like you that have made history, you made history.
Well, I may have. I hope I hadn't made y'all feel silly.
Okay.
I've had a good time.
I'll make us feel
I'll
honored.
leave a footprint anyway to somebody.
That's the difference in racing then and racing now. We had a good time back
Yes, we had a good time.
then. And now they just so much money and thought in. I don't think none of them likes it anymore. They just do it. Just do it because they have
For the
to.
money. That's what they
People
do it for.
retire at an earlier age now too, because the pressures are so great the way it's set up now. They don't race for 25 and 30 years in the cup racing and stuff like they do. They're lucky to make it 20 years if they do anymore. The format they're using now, you have to win the championship just about every week.
Yeah, exactly. And the drivers, I don't think, appreciate what they do. I think they're doing it strictly for the money. I don't think they did it or doing it because you enjoyed it. Some of them I know enjoy it, but I don't think it means anything to them like it did to us. I really don't.
It was an addiction to us. We loved it.
We
We
loved
couldn't do without it.
The last race
Well, you
was
saw what I had on TV when you came in.
Still watching it, yeah.
I'm still doing it. Once you get hooked, you're hooked, and I don't care what kind of racing it is. It
That's
doesn't
right.
have to be cars. It can be go-karts. It can be motorcycles, which my boys went into.
What did Peanut like to do, by the way, when he wasn't involved in racing? What did he like to do?
Antique cars,
And you still have,
and I still have one.
and what is that?
Well, it's 100 years old. It's a 1923 Model T.
I've got to experience that car.
I've got a picture of that car right over there. Yeah, I'll show it to you. Reach over there and get that. It's right behind you. I'll show you one of them.
They whenever this was several years ago, I called Peanut, and I was having a little thing up there with the old Ford building, and he'd been sick, didn't feel good, but you brought him up there. Do you remember that?
No?
And
I'm
whenever,
sure.
after about 10 minutes, he got up standing on his tiptoes up there. They got talking. I said, I'll
He
get
got
you.
excited.
He
didn't
got excited, and they had the biggest time up there talking.
Was it 1967, the last race in the fall of 67?
Probably.
Is that right?
I've got
Gary's dad, Earl Lorance, won that race. Tell the story about Peanut calling Earl about the last lap.
a few years ago, after years of not racing out there, was they won the last race out there. Now, okay, in 1967, whatever the last race was, and he won it, and I've got the paper that and all that. Well, years later, Peanut called me one night. It was about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. It was getting kind of late, and I thought, what's wrong? And he called me, and he said, let me tell you something. You tell your old man he won the last race, but I made the last lap. And he had come by out there, and they was baling hay up there.
And he drove.
And he wound up, and he said it took him 30 minutes to figure out how to get in there. And he wound up going up there and around back down in the track and found the track. And when he did, he said, I made a lap or two, so I made the last lap on it.
Those two were something else.
So we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, each and every one of us. Randall, you got anything else?
I just want to thank Gilda again, not only for letting us do this today, but what she and Peanut did. Like I say, we wouldn't be here without them. I'll be forever grateful, and I'm really grateful for the lady that Gilda is. I love her to death, and
I
she
appreciate
means the
that.
world to us old timers that's
That's
around. She was a big part of us coming up.
Well, I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you saying those kind of things, but it was just life.
And I'd like to say thank you for everything y'all done. And if it hadn't been for y'all, we'd have never got there.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that too. I feel great that we did something that you kids, and you are kids to me, have enjoyed and still can enjoy it. I do. I appreciate
And it will be there forever,
it.
Gilda.
Yes, thank you.
And it's on that note that we're going to end this episode of the Southern Dirt Motorsports Podcast. And we'll see you guys next time.